Don, the auction professor. I had a message from a friend, somebody I've dealt with and known for quite a few years, who also sells online. He is now in trouble, legally wise, and I'm going to go into that today. I'm going to touch base on things you should not sell, and these are collectible items that people may not realize are against the law. I'll tell you his story first. He sells collectibles, antiques, things like I sell. Mostly things like I sell. He does sell clothing too, of course, and books and, you know, video games when he walks across them, but he mostly does vintage stuff. He sold a bottle of vintage alcohol. Didn't think much of it. It was antique. It was, you know, still sealed. The bottle was damaged in shipping, and it was leaking out all over the place. And, you know, he had it wrapped fairly well, he says. But the point was that it was alcohol. It was dripped all over the place, and they investigated the issue. He doesn't have a license to sell alcohol. He didn't realize that selling a old vintage 50, 100-year-old bottle of vintage alcohol was against the law. You know, I understood that. You know, I know how the legal law works because I worked in restaurants that sold alcohol. We actually had to take, you know, responsible vendor classes and things along that line. You know, I've taken hazardous chemical classes and you know, HAZUP classes and hazmat classes, you know, because we transport items sometimes with the chemicals and things that our drivers used to do. So I've taken a lot of these classes and understand, you know, shipping and things. You know, I've handled shipments of nitrate film, you know, vintage 35mm film. So, you know, I've looked into all this, you know, and I've taken the tests and, you know, I've got some certificates and certified in some areas. So I understood this, you know, I never brought it up with him, never even thought about it. I figured that was just a given, that you'd know not to sell it. But now he's in some legal trouble. He's been contacted by, obviously, the government. You know, you can't sell vintage alcohol bottles that are sealed. You have to have a liquor license for that. You can't do it. It's against the law in every state in the union, as far as I know, and everything I've looked up in the past. Same thing goes for vintage packs, unopened packs of cigarettes. You know, the chances of you getting in trouble are probably slim, but regardless of the issue, I would never do it because it's against the law. You know, old tobacco is still tobacco. It does not negate any issue as to the age of the item. I don't see anything in the law that says if it's over so many years, you know, it's okay to sell. It's just not a fact. You know, you can't sell it. You can't do it. You know, I've talked about packs of cigarettes that you can sell and matches and things. It's okay to sell empty packs of cigarettes with nothing in them, but not with content. Just like the little liquor bottles that still have liquor in it, like the airplane cruise ships and the hotel bottles. People love those bottles, and they do sell in antique stores and stuff, but that's still, from what I understand, illegal too, without a liquor license. You know, chances of you getting busted on that are probably pretty slim, but all the evidence the government needs to charge you are sitting there in open sight on eBay any given day of the week if you sell it. It's in the ended items, completed listings, so, you know, anybody can do it. It's tied to you. You know, don't do it. Don't risk yourself. Watch out. You know, who knows what's going to happen over this issue to him. You know, he may end up going to jail for selling an old bottle of liquor. You know, ignorance of the law is no excuse. That will not waive anything in a court of law. You know, there's assumption of, you know, attempting to commit a crime, you know, where they might waive it, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Plus, either way, you're probably going to end up spending, you know, a couple $1,000s on a lawyer to cover this in court in the first place. There's other things you can't sell. Certain states, I believe Georgia, you cannot sell anything Native American without a specific piece of paper stating what it is, where it came from, then it's certified from a actual Native American tribe in this country, you know, and that's hard to get, you know, and it costs money. So, you know, and there's another state that you can't sell, and maybe it's Oklahoma. I'm not really sure which, because I don't sell enough bullion or scrap silver these days to worry about it. I usually just, you know, do something locally with that, since I can get more of a profit margin without shipping and fees. So that's usually a local market item nowadays: silver, scrap, bullion, and gold. But for those that do sell it, you got to watch out, because there are laws in some states. You know, I do sell gold filled, you know, so I do pay attention to that. Next time I do it, I'll have to look again, because the law passed last year at the end sometime that does outlaw it in some areas without a specific permit and all this other stuff. So you got to look into some of that stuff when you're doing these. I always check things out like that to see if they've updated. The Native American Relics Act, there are some laws with that you have to be cautious of. You know, and eBay does warn you as well before you list, even if the word Indian shows up in like Indian Lake, Michigan is something I do sell postcards of quite often, and you'll get a warning on that, you know, when you're listing it. But some of that items are banned, so you just got to be weary on what you sell. Just like guns and gun parts, you cannot sell a receiver on eBay. You know, even with, you know, antiques and vintage items. I know in the past you could. I've sold vintage guns on eBay when it was allowed, you know, 1800s. You know, I had an 1808 Springfield that I sold. It's like a 6-foot gun. It couldn't be fired, but that still doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter that the federal government has a antique law that declares a gun an antique and something that you could sell without a license at some point. I believe maybe 1898 or before. I'm not sure on the dates, as I don't really mess around with guns very much. I have in the past, and I'm not, you know, bothered by the fact of selling guns, just so they're done properly and legally, of course. But you got to be worried on that. I've sold gun barrels in the past, you know, that still the receivers on, and we always did something to rectify that, or I cut the receiver in half and trashed the receiver out just to sell the barrel, or, you know, sold the trigger separately and you know, didn't sell the receiver at all. But those are just some things that can get you in jail. Selling stolen goods obviously is another one. Whether you know it or not, whether you buy like something off Craigslist, you know, iPhones are stolen all the time. I'm running into hearing cases and stories of people buying a stolen iPhone, didn't know it, from, you know, somebody who's supposedly reputable. You know, so for us, you know, we don't mess with a lot of that. I don't mess with anything risky. And, you know, a lot of the antiques you got to be wary of. Other items that you can't sell that you might run across and not even realize it are tortoiseshell items. Now, we run across tortoiseshell pins and buttons quite often. I know what they look like, though, you know, so I know what not to sell. It is against the law. It's a Endangered Species Act. You know, you can't mail it. If you mail something like that, you can get in trouble for selling it and then mailing it for mailing it over state lines. So you just got to be, you know, cautious. If you don't know the difference between horn and tortoiseshell, you better learn it before you sell one of those items. You're pretty safe on like knife handles and stuff because they never really made tortoiseshell out of, you know, or knife handles out of tortoiseshell. You might run into a comb that's made out of tortoiseshell, small one, but for the most part they'd be bone or horn. So you're pretty safe on that. Another item you can't sell, which I have run into, and you will run into occasionally, are like sealskin fur items. Anything seal fur you can't sell. Sealskin you can't sell. You know, it's just something that's banned. There are some, you know, tribes that can sell the item again or harvest it in limited quantities, but you can't sell it. You know, that's for necessity for them. That's, you know, food sources and things like that. So that's not an issue, you know, for me. I don't mess with that kind of stuff. We've run into it, and I've purchased a seal fur skin coat once before from the 20s, and it was in real nice condition. But unfortunately, I could not sell it on eBay. I could not legally sell it at all. And I learned out the hard way. I don't remember what we did with it. It's been a few years. We gave it to some government organization for disposal. It took a little while just to find out what to do with that. I didn't want to just throw it away. I thought maybe there was some way somebody could use it. It was a good item. We spent some money on it. I don't think the person who sold it to me didn't, you know, intentionally was trying to pawn something off. I just don't think they knew the difference. It was an older person, somebody who I've dealt with and still deal with. I talked about it with him, and, you know, he was surprised. So I don't doubt it at all. It's hard to tell sometimes for some people the difference. It's a rougher fur, and I've run into it many times since then. So, again, don't get yourself in trouble. Don't get yourself in a spot where the government's going to come knocking and sending you a notice or showing up at your door to arrest you for you selling something. If you're selling sealed alcohol that's vintage, a child or someone below the legal age of drinking may buy it without knowing. Even you asking for a signed copy of a driver's license and such forth, it could be a child of the person whose account, you know, who's bought it from you, and they're using a fake ID or their father's ID with a fake signature. You got to be careful. Just because it's from that person, it doesn't mean anything. You don't have a license either way, so don't do it. You know, you can look on there right now, and you're going to see people selling those bottles right now, antique-wise. I know what's happened now with a friend, so, you know, and I've heard other stories in the past. Didn't know anybody personally until now. But that is an issue. Hopefully that gives you a little thought here. Watch out on things like that. Even sealed cans of like Billy Bob beer and stuff like that. It's still alcohol. A kid might drink it and think, he's going to get drunk and not realize that the stuff maybe went bad and they're going to get sick instead. And again, even if I did sell this stuff, I'm always cautious, and that's why we carry a business owner's policy. It covers you from those accidents. And again, just like recalled items, you got to know what's safe and what's not safe and what legally can be sold, because you get hit with a recall, you could serve some jail time if someone's hurt from an item you sold that was recalled. But that's just a touch on this. Just research what you're selling. Make sure you're selling safe items. And usually if you want to know if it's been recalled, you can just type in the item and it'll give you notice online. Again, Don the Auction Professor, hopefully you learned something from that. Hopefully that gives you some items to stay away from and not sell and not mess with. If you like this video, please hit the like button below, comment, subscribe, and tell a friend.